Hi, my name is Jacinda Castro. I attend Grand Canyon University and I am in Legal and Ethical Principles in Healthcare. My professor is Dr. Ram Jatin, and today we are going to be discussing a brain death scenario. Here's the YouTube link. You can go ahead and follow along. Just go ahead and click on the link. So the issue presented to us is a 45-year-old patient who has suffered a serious brain injury from a car accident that happened 2 days ago. The current state of the patient is currently intubated, but that does not yet meet the full criteria for being brain dead, according to the Arizona State Legislature, 4-1107. The spouse has been in contact with the attending physician and has been informed that the patient would be able to survive, but would likely need to be on life support to live. Right now, there is rising tension since half of the family is advising that the patient would not want to live like this, but the other half is pointing fingers and accusing that the other family members are wanting to kill the patient. There's been some rising litigations about an inheritance for some of the family members should the patient die. This family feud has been escalating and has gotten very intense to the point where it's now disrupting the medical and nursing staff team. Now we're going to look at some of the laws and regulations that are applicable to this scenario. We're going to look at the Arizona State Legislature 4-1107, Determination of Death and Status Rules, the Uniform Determination of Death Act of 1981, what is healthcare power of attorney, the dead donor rule, and what criteria meet brain death guidelines of the American Academy of Neurology. Being incapacitated is different in all 50 US states, but each state does reflect to some degree the laws they have in place for when that should happen. The laws vary widely due to jurisdiction, and there is no national standard format. This is valid for all jurisdictions. A healthcare power of attorney is a legal document that grants in writing a certain individual to hold power to make decisions related to healthcare decisions on that person's behalf when a patient loses functionality to make their own decisions. There can be more than one power of attorney to make decisions on behalf of the patient. Under the state of Arizona, you can decide if you want to donate organs and tissue and for what purpose as well as what organization you plan to use. The purpose of the UDDA, also known as the Uniform Determination of Death Act. This act gives determination of death and requires and recognizes total brain death from a neurological definition as an irreversible cessation of all functions of brain, including brainstem functions that have ceased. The American Academy of Neurology, AAN, endorses the UDDA's definition that brain death has occurred when the irreversible loss of all functions of the entire brain, including the brainstem, has been determined by the demonstration of complete loss of consciousness, such as a coma, brainstem reflexes, and the independent capacity for ventilatory drive, in the absence of any factors that imply possible reversibility. Since this process does take time to complete a proper brain death examination, it allows families to have closure and make a brain death declaration before they ask the family questions about wanting to donate organs. The dead donor rule can only take place after death, whether the patient has encountered damages or irreversibility cardiac functions or loss of all brain, the dead donor rule is an ethical norm and is protection for the patient to only take vital organs from patients who are registered and classified as dead. A hospital physician makes the diagnosis of brain death. The donor network of Arizona does not determine brain death. The American Academy of Neurology has guidelines for how to perform and conduct a brain death examination, and this examination is aimed at standardizing the process across all hospitals in the U.S. by all physicians. The patient's loved ones are to be informed and actually can watch the examination so they can understand that this condition cannot be irreversible. Let's discuss the laws and regulations when making a decision. Arizona State Law 14-1107 states that a patient is not considered completely brain dead because he or she does not meet the criteria. Arizona legislator shows importance because if the patient is not considered brain dead, then the family would still have hope that a full recovery could happen and would proceed to treatment. The power of attorney is a legal document that you can provide to another adult to have authority on your behalf. The healthcare power of attorney in Arizona is called an agent, to make all future healthcare decisions if you become too ill to make them. As the agent, you can decide what organs to donate or tissues, and for what purposes, and to what organization. You also have the option of whole body donation for research purposes. Again, this is only if the incapacitated patient cannot make any of these decisions. Now let's discuss the Uniform Determination of Death Act that has been adopted by each of the 50 states in the US. Since the process takes time to fully complete a proper brain dead examination, it actually allows families to have closure and make a brain death declaration before they ask the family questions about wanting to donate organs. It is after this, the determination of death, that the dead donor rule would apply to see what organs or tissues the medical power of attorney decides to donate. Some of the ethical issues that may arise since we are the hospital administrator is that there needs to be a balance for what is ethical while still upholding respect for the inherent dignity of the patient. So making sure correct exams, testing, and signed consent forms are accurate and reviewed for this patient needs to be done. The family disagreement presents the biggest ethical issue in this situation, since the family cannot come to terms on a final decision for the patient. The issue is whether the patient would want to live like this and what is in the best interest of the patient. Half of the family states that this is not how the patient would want to live the rest of their life, while the other half have allegations about inheritance and are accusing other family members as wanting to kill the patient. The second ethical issue is the patient is not classified as being completely brain dead, which leads to there being hope that the patient will recover and reverse brain function. The ethical issue is the family choosing the right decision if the patient does in fact have a chance of brain function reversibility. What are some of the appropriate implementations to support policies and procedures to ensure ethical integrity? Involving the Ethics Committee to ensure protection of human rights and well-being of the patient presented to us is being well thought of and taken into consideration is priority. So making sure we are following up with lawyers should they be brought into the case, should the patient have a medical power of attorney. Providing communication and transparency to both families, medical team, and legal team will help the process so that we limit the rising tension and escalation happening between the family. Lastly, staying in line with hospital policies and guidelines will help with this whole process. Now we're going to discuss the best policy and procedures in making this decision-making process. According to Meta 2023, the Ethics Committee is comprised of multiple members with both expertise in non-scientific and scientific areas that function to ensure the protection to human rights and well-being of research subjects that is comprised of 6 basic principles of autonomy, justice, beneficence, non-maleficence, confidentiality, and honesty. The Ethics Committee will review the patient's medical records and the case presented so that the best procedures are taken place. There are a total of 8 steps to recognize the ethical dilemma and to collect all facts. And I'll be going over all 8. The first one is review all decision-making models, evaluate different models, decide if dilemma is ethical or unethical, select the best model and apply it, make an appropriate decision, monitor the results of the decision presented, and the last step is to repeat if needed, which is step 8. The second policy is taking into consideration patient care policies. The Ethics Committee will ensure that all policies are being utilized and taken into consideration to resolve the situation. Patient treatment policies are an outline that the medical staff should follow to respond to specific situations, such as the brain death situation. So how do we ensure that procedures are followed correctly? The hospital needs to have policies in place related to death by neurological criteria, DNC. Having important policies in place ensures that death is understood by all members in the medical team, and it also places limits on the authority of families should they proceed with continued treatment for deceased patient. Policies inform best practices for disclosing death to family members for resolving disputes when the declaration of death is not accepted by families. Providing staff with ethical decision-making and training ensures that these decisions arise if there is support throughout all hospital, and it keeps the medical team ready to provide feedback. Consulting ethics program if a family will not accept the termination of death. Resources that are going to support this decision. There are several resources that we can actually use in helping to decide. The first being the power of attorney, who in this case is the person who is in charge of making the final decision. The second is the state laws and regulations, which the hospital and power of attorney must honor and obey. Lastly is the ethics committee. They are the ones that will help determine a decision, one that is made, and will let the family know if this is considered ethical or unethical. These resources will help to support this final decision, which consists of all 3 resources. These are going to have a huge impact in the healthcare decision-making process, especially for those who are incompetent of making their own decisions. Now that we have reached the end of the death case scenario, I want to say thank you for your time, and I leave you with this. If you were in my position, what would you do for this family? Thank you so much.